This is DesignSafe Radio, where natural hazards researchers strive to make our society more resilient to everything nature throws at us.
So you mentioned a lot about this perishable data. So after a landslide, after an earthquake, after a hurricane, you get, I'm imagining, terabytes of like laser scanning data or multispectral camera data or Google Street View images. What happens next? How do we get this to actually a practical form? And what does that form kind of look like? What is this data used for?
So there's a lot of different paths towards that we follow after returning from a deployment, and it's really driven very much by the users of what their priorities are, what they see as the kind of urgencies on post-processing, what kind of experience they have. And so let me just offer you kind of a range of options. We will sometimes return with users who have no experience whatsoever with post-processing. They are not really so interested in the post-processing itself. They're interested in centimeter scale resolution measurements of a building deformation, because we're again here to support their scientific work, their larger scientific objectives. In cases like that, a lot of times we'll do the post-processing ourselves for them and quickly deliver it to them to, very rapidly enable their science. On the other hand, we work with some users who have experience with post-processing data. And so they may take that and work with their students or make with their home research teams and post-processing that. Sometimes we have users who come to the RAPID facility and will spend 1 or 2 or 3 days here in residence working with our staff and learning very quickly how to post-process the data. And then with that understanding, they'll return to their home institutions and they'll carry forth from there. So again, there's a whole range of ways that we move forward in the actual processing. And then the manner in which the data is post-processed is really very specific to the instruments. And so, of course, we have proprietary software that's used for laser scanner manufacturer A that's different than that which we would use for laser scanner manufacturer B. And again, that's some of the value that we have. We already have licenses for those different proprietary programs, but we also know how to use those programs and help users get move their data processing along.
Yeah,
and
that's
then there's
not
the
a
other
trivial
kind of
thing either. Like, from the RAPID workshop a few years ago, it's like, oh my goodness, just the learning curve for things like that software for the Leica laser scanner is like, wow, this is going to take a long time to master to where I would be able to do anything usable with it other than just say, hey, I made a little, point cloud here, and getting to know how to actually use that for a scientifically useful purpose. It takes a whole lot of training, which you guys provide to some level as well. But if you're, like you said, the kind of person who's like, just give me my data. I've got problems to solve, and I got enough other things to worry about, and don't have 1,000 hours or 100 hours to gain mastery in each of these software platforms. So it's really good that you're able to kind of meet people where they're at and where their interests really are.
Yeah, and there's also questions about like what resolution you need, because if you need the very, very tight resolution, which can be provided with the data sets collected, it may take longer to get the data into that form. And sometimes we work with teams who say, I don't need centimeter scale resolutions. I need measurements that are on the order of 5 centimeters across a very broad field. That will help us suggest to them another processing routine that can happen a lot faster, and we won't get bogged down in a sense into those details. But then very much what we try to do with the facility is take that friction out of the system, right? Of collecting the field data. The friction is when you get back and getting bogged down with all this post-processing. We want to take that away to kind of more smoothly enable individuals to collect the field data and put it to work for scientific purposes very quickly.
Do you work with them on kind of the research questions that they want to answer up front so that informs all of the rest? How do you work with them on that side of the house?
We always ask at the outset, what are your scientific objectives? What are you trying to achieve? We don't want to drive the science. We have brilliant teams that we work with that are very focused, that are domain experts, and we would never want to supersede that. We don't want to drive the science in a sense ourselves. We don't want to have a monopoly on that. Instead, we want, in this marketplace of intellectual concepts and ideas and inquiries, we want the community to drive those. We want to understand what those objectives are and then work with those teams to help them achieve those objectives. So we're really very careful in not prescribing what kind of data should be collected, but rather saying, what are you trying to achieve here? And then we can talk about what might be useful to collect, or what kind of instruments would be best suited for their objectives, or what kind of instruments could be best imported into, for example, Indonesia, with like our knowledge of working with expediters and so forth. So we put all of that together, but really to recommend a plan, but not to recommend how to actually do the work. We'll make those suggestions, and teams sometimes say, although I understand you're suggesting that, I actually still want this instrument. And they're in control of the project. We're here to support them, but we'll provide them with as much advice as possible. And I'll tell you that in 95% of the cases, the teams concur, like, okay, this is a great strategy. Let's use these instruments and move forward in that direction.
Yeah, and it's really important that, I mean, we have great community-fed things like the NHERI Science Plan and the Rapid Science Plan as part of that as well, that can help give some granularity and give some direction towards research questions. If a researcher is like, I don't know what I want to do. I know I want to use the rapid stuff because it's really exciting, but I don't know what to use it for. We've got those elements for inspiration and a bit of guidance, but not prescription, it sounds like.
Exactly.
Another thing here that we are talking about, and this is one of my other passion areas, as you know, is that planning aspect of going through, here's some possible courses of action you can take, and here's some things you may want to take into consideration. How does that planning process go towards those scientific objectives? Do you always link it back to the science plan, or is it a set process every time that you go through? Can you tell us a little bit more about how that goes?
Yeah, every single one is really a bit different. I mean, we have, in a sense, a template for how we respond. But again, it's very much contoured to the mission. And I think that is every setting is different. The weather conditions are different. The customs regulations are different. And so all of those things kind of go into our planning. But the way this would kind of unfold with, for example, the NHERI Science Plan would really kind of set the grand challenges for the community. The community would say, here's an opportunity to make some progress towards these grand challenges by collecting this data, analyzing it in this fashion. They would communicate that to us. We'd very quickly, put together a data collection plan, an instrumentation plan, again, kind of best suited to sort of the whole range of variables we were kind of thinking about. We have an online form that's very easy to use on our website. We ask for some real basic information. We call you within 24 hours. And so I think the important thing is we call, and we do that so that we can have a discussion. We don't have a lengthy email exchange, because we really want to have a dialogue and develop a plan together very quickly. And the fastest way of doing that is to get on a telephone call or a video conference call. And so we'll make those recommendations, and then we'll kind of set the plan and the process of how we're going to get these instruments to you. Are you going to come pick them up? Are we going to ship them to a holding facility? Turns out to be quite a challenge, particularly working, for example, in a hurricane-affected area where the FedEx holding centers may be large volume buildings that are now closed. And so we'll kind of work with teams in sometimes getting it into an adjacent city and then getting it driven in. But we do have a template of all of the things that are important, but we don't follow it so systematically, because again, it really is taken very much on a case-by-case basis. In a hurricane-affected area where the FedEx holding centers may be large volume buildings that are now closed. And so we'll kind of work with teams in sometimes getting it into an adjacent city and then getting it driven in. But we do have a template of all of the things that are important, but we don't follow it so systematically, because again, it really is taken very much on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, that's really important. And I want to wrap up here and getting into some of the really exciting deployments that you've been on. You've been at like over 90 of these missions to all over hither and yon. What are some of your highlights over the past few years that the Rapid team has sent people and equipment to?
This is a really hard question. It's
I know,
a little
it's like
bit like
your
asking
favorite
me
kid,
for my,
right? Yeah.
who's the favorite of my children? Because all of the missions, as I kind of think about them, are really all really interesting for a whole range of different reasons. But some of the ones that really come to mind in terms of their impact, the Apollo, the GEAR, the Geotechnical Extreme Event Reconnaissance Organization mission to Palu, Indonesia, their investigation of flow slides that very tragically killed over 4,000 people. That was really an extraordinary mission for collecting data that nobody else had collected. Data has since been used and reused by a number of international teams, but the breakthrough with that mission was that the drone and the structure from motion reconstruction to remake the landscape and capture those scenes enabled that team to make a real breakthrough, which was in identifying the role of a agricultural canal in artificially recharging the groundwater system. So wow. I think that was a big outcome. On the structure side, the Hurricane Michael reconnaissance in support of STEER provided some really unique fundamental insights to the behavior of large volume buildings in hurricanes, and also with some recommendations for improving the building code in that area. We have a project in Westport, Washington, with social scientists in digitally capturing a city that is at risk for tsunamis. And the social sciences aspect of that is how can you use this digital information to relay these concepts to members of the public and decision makers so they can make decisions about their future as to whether it's worthwhile to invest in things like vertical evacuation structures. That's been a really interesting project. I think that certainly over the last year or so, we're approaching the summer. So what comes to mind is the Surfside condominium collapse, obviously an enormous tragedy. Oh, yeah. While that was not an NSF project per se, we did deploy almost immediately in support of NIST with our laser scanners to capture the standing portion of that building before it was ultimately demolished within 24 hours of our arrival. And that was because of an incoming hurricane. And so that was intentionally imploded. But a lot of the information and understanding about why that disaster occurred was really contained in that standing building. So we very quickly laser scanned that, had a great team on the ground and scanned that from multiple perspectives. And then the last one I'll just say quickly is the Marshall Fire in Colorado. It's a project led by Erica Fisher and Brad Wham. This was a GEAR mission, and I think they've made some really interesting findings with the kind of better understanding the urban wildfire interface and how fire propagates across properties and what are some of the factors that can influence that beyond wind and some of the obvious kind of elements.
And I would be remiss to not mention the one that you've got in your background here. I think this is what New Zealand. I mean, you got a LiDAR scanner up on the hill there, and I think if you look very
carefully over my shoulder, I guess it's over to my it's over my left shoulder. If you look very carefully, you'll see our MapTech laser scanner that has a scan in process when this photo was taken. That's shooting across the valley. This was an investigation of geologic hazards in the South Island of New Zealand, supporting a research investigation as to how these risks can be disaggregated and better understood. It was really one of our first deployments, international deployments, when we became field operational in 2018. And so this is one of the really extraordinary things about this job is the opportunity to work in settings such as this, just really unique places in the world. This was a beautiful setting to work in. We work in some really challenging locations as well, particularly post-disaster settings that can be much more difficult.
Yeah, if these stories are inspiring you to be like, oh man, I want to listen to Joe talk all day, come to a couple of things that you'll be at as the Rapid workshop in the end of July. There's probably no more space there, but if you happen to be there, definitely grab Joe for a drink after one of the sessions, and he'll be happy to regale you with stories of deployments. But hopefully, I'm not going to twist your arm too far, but to say that you'll be back at the American Geophysical Union Fall Meeting in Chicago in December, where we'll always go out to dinner afterwards with any interested natural hazards researcher, or grab you for coffee and be happy to chat about anything reconnaissance related.
Absolutely. And Dan, as we emerge from this pandemic and, and we return to in-person meetings, I'll tell you that we'll be there in a number of venues. We're going to be attending the National Conference on Earthquake Engineering in July, and we're on the books for attending a number of other meetings. And so we're going to also have some trainings in conjunctions with those. But it's really important for us to connect directly with the user community and kind of meet them where they are, which typically at some of these larger venues. So as we emerge, we look forward to talking with you all in person.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll make sure to put links in the show notes for this episode so that you'll be able to register for those conferences and meet up with the Rapid staff everywhere where they're going to be. So I guess I'll be seeing you in Salt Lake City in June, which will be great. Looking forward to that. And where else can people follow along with the great things that the Rapid is doing, or maybe submit an idea for a project? Where can they find you?
So the easiest way right now is to find us just by Googling UW Rapid. If you just Google Rapid, you can imagine you'll get a billion entries in Google because of that use of the word. I will say that we are going to be unveiling a significantly revised and enhanced website that's going to have a lot of our training materials, some video training materials available, a more timely advertisement of some of our training opportunities. So that's going to probably be unveiled in about the next 1 or 2 months. I can't point you to that yet, but again, Google us and we're easy to find. We have simple contact information. Go to our contacts page and send us an email, give us a call, whatever your preferred method is.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. It's always great to chat with you, and just a pleasure having you. And thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. It's great to chat with you, and thanks for having us.